the ROI Guy.
Hi, this is April Morley, co-founder of Genius Drive and the Enterprise Value Collective.
And welcome to the Value Coffee Talk podcast.
This podcast is a service of the Enterprise Value Collective, a community for business value-focused leaders and practitioners, and sponsored by our value consultancy, Genius Drive.
Our mission is to help accelerate and optimize value articulation in each of your customer engagements and throughout the customer lifecycle. And to help us understand some of the best practices in that, we've invited Vikas Mundada. Welcome, Vikas.
Welcome, Vikas.
Hey, guys.
Vikas is currently the head of value for security management firm Ping Identity. He's a longtime value and management consulting veteran with likes of Oracle and others. So we're so pleased to have him here today. The first question I have for you, Vikas, is definitely in an uncertain economy, many customers are scrutinizing renewals like never before. What are you seeing and hearing when it comes to renewals?
Yeah, we're definitely seeing that renewals as well as expansions are getting a little bit more difficult, not necessarily because of the tightening economy. I think that's definitely a part of it. We have to be at a good crossroads between driving value internally for enterprises as well as with their consumer base, because identity plays such a pivotal role that we don't see a lot of it, but we definitely have customers who talk to us about rates are changing, economy's changing. How can you help us drive more value into the organization? And that's front and center in all of the conversations we're having right now is what's the value that you've gotten so far? And let's make sure we can continue optimizing that value into the future.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense given the state of the economy. What does that look like in terms of expansions?
Yeah, it's a little bit harder for me to talk about the expansion piece. When we look at expansions, we're looking at cross-sells on other products that we might have. And then also, even in the base that we have now, how do we upsell more that we have as they're growing? If the organization's not growing, the expansion's not with the product set that they have, then it's more about what are the other products that they might be interested in, and less about the product suite itself. And it's funny, I listen to Todd Capone, and I love Todd Capone. He's one of my favorites. But it's even then as understanding what the problem is that you're solving for. And the expansion may not be go solve more of the same problem. It's let's go find other problems to solve for and get the economies of scale that you would by working with a single partner versus mapping out that journey with other partners, taking the time and the effort to make sure that partner's qualified to help you out. So that's really where the expansion work comes in.
Now, both of those, Vikas, lead us to a big topic of today, which is customer success. Obviously, they're the ones that are on the front lines of the renewals, maybe the front lines of expansion for many organizations. When it comes to customer success, though, we find that many of them are still focused on quote unquote technical adoption metrics. How'd the rollout go? Or what issues and how are we triaging those issues? How is adoption? How is usage? And they don't seem to be as focused yet on business value centric metrics. Tell us about customer success at Ping Identity and some of what you've started to work with or have worked with them over the past couple of years to try to get that business value muscle going.
Yeah, I think it's a balancing act. I've worked at quite a few organizations where customer success, we're recruiting certain people to do certain skill sets to do a certain job. And as the role of customer success continues to evolve, what's the message? How do we want them engaging with customers? What's the intent? And what I've seen across my career and here at Ping as well is that evolution continues. We start with things that are very easy to measure. How much have they deployed? How's the project going? And then when people start pivoting their mindset, I was actually on with one of our guys this morning, and it's the mindset of let's think about the whole suite of projects that customer has. And are we delivering the value that that customer needs for the individual to be successful, for their team to be successful, for the organization to be successful, and really delineating across all three of those vectors versus just thinking about, well, I've got 600 identities but deployed and I have 1,000 that I'm paying for. Well, what's the value of the extra 400, right? There's obviously that version of it, but there's also the version of the 600 you've deployed, what was the benefit to them? And using that to explore, you have 400 more you can go use. How do you go use that 400 more, right? And let's go find projects for them to start diving into.
Because one of the things that I know we worked on together was putting together a realized value model and toolkit in the beginning for the customer success organization and for the business value organization to use. Tell us about that and how that rollout went.
Tom, this is probably one of those failures in my career that I learned a lot from and have talked to a lot of our other practitioners about. When we built that originally, and I feel like 3 years ago now, maybe 2 years ago now, I genuinely thought we were doing the right thing. Let's go look at trend analyses. Let's go look at data over time to help rationalize the benefit of the projects. And what I came to realize, and we had some other difficulties, like we had some change in leadership, we had some other things that were happening. But what I started learning was customers weren't as interested in the trend analysis. I love data analytics. I have a data background. I love the data. I love to see trend lines and being able to report on trends. But what I was getting from the customers was, help me in my next conversation. Help me show the value today of the impact that we were doing. Don't give me the long story. Give me the today story. And so what we started re-engineering from having over-engineered it was, how do we get simpler? And I started talking with the likes of some of the folks that we know from Adobe, from Coupa, quite a few others. But we started rationalizing down what are the questions that are the most impactful. And anchoring on one single question wasn't enough. So we really distilled it down to 3. How many, how often, and so what? And any 2 of the 3 gives you a really good story to work from. Any singular data point just wasn't enough. And it's because you can't map a story out. If you have how many, but you don't have the so what, people lose interest. If you have the so what, but you don't contextualize it with the scale, people lose interest. And so it was important to find the 3 that would make it really easy. And frankly, that's how I've been rolling it out with customer success this go around is, let's get really simple. What are some basic questions that you can take to the customer, start a narrative, and then build upon that narrative?
Love that. Keep it simple. Can you talk a little bit more about how customer success has adopted that approach, how the customer has responded, and just a little bit more in detail?
Yeah. With customer success, it's a growing pain, right? You teach the ones that really are at the front end of it, you make sure they embrace it. And the approach that I've taken is find the ones that are champions. And we've done this with value. When I started the value program 4 years ago, we did the same thing. Find the champions, get them feeling very comfortable about that, have them be successful, and then have their peers start seeing that success so they start adopting it as well. So following the classic model, the classic bell curve of the adopters mentality, right? And so we started following that. The gentleman that I was on the phone with this morning, in fact, he's one of those early adopters. He's already met with 2 clients or 2 customers, and he's using that mentality, and the customers are reacting really well to it. I have one customer that actually at SCO 23, so our SCO last year, I had a sales rep bring an idea to me about a customer that she was working with, and we went to him with a point of view already built out based on a few data points that we had based on some industry stats, and showed it to him and said, what do you think? Does this resonate? And instead of coming hands open, asking them to feed the bucket and tell us all the dirty laundry, we came to them with a point of view and asked them to decide, does this make sense, or are we missing something? The benefit that we got from those early engagements was the customer then had something that I feel like some of us suffer from blank sheet blank sheet of paper
Mm-hmm.
syndrome, right? Where
Yeah.
there's no
Absolutely.
words, I don't know what to give you.
Mm-hmm.
By taking the point of view to them, it helped him really rationalize what was important and correct the mistakes that were there, which is perfect. Because it's funny, now I have people from the product team playing back to me the things that we shared with the customer. And so we've gone full circle of that customer is sharing the same value message to other people, even to us, as this is gospel. This is how I'm talking internally to
Mm-hmm.
my executives and to my team. So it's been pretty effective.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely. That's always the goal, right? To have the customer adopt the value proposition as their own.
yeah, and Vikas, there's so many customers that we've engaged with as well, where they'll sit down with you initially and they'll start the call with, I know you're here to talk to me about value, but I don't know if I can quantify that for you. I don't know the value that I've received. Yet, if you're able to provide that point of view and begin probing on the point of view with the questions of, as you say, for this particular category, how many of these were you doing before? How many have you achieved now? How often? So what? And you start leading the witness in a way with a strong point of view. I think that that is powerful. And that framework, I think, is important for the customer. It's also important for customer success because I don't think they know exactly how to have that dialogue, right?
That's right. And it's difficult when you're basically thrown to the wolves to your own devices without a model to operate on.
Mm-hmm.
You lean on the things that you know how to do. And this isn't one of those that we generally hire customer success people to go execute on.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's a little bit of a different mindset. But I'll tell you, the best customer success folks that I've worked with do it naturally. They are inquisitive. They want to make sure it's success from the customer's lens, not success from the vendor's lens.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as that pivot happens, the dialogue changes. The customers start gravitating towards it. They recognize customer success is not an option. And it's a mantra that we've adopted at Ping is customer success is not an option. If they're not successful, either we've done something wrong or we shouldn't have been doing business together to begin with. And so how do we make sure that they're successful? We understand their problems from their lens, not ours.
And that's great. And you talked about champions and getting started with the champions. What's the next step for you?
It's the early adopters. So we went from the early adopters to the next group, right? And finding out what do they need to be successful. We've built a couple of internal tools that have a little bit more detailed questions. So going from how many, how often, so what, to, well, if you had to take those questions and give me something a little bit more granular, what would they be?
Mm-hmm.
So that people are anchoring on, I think the age-old mantra of make money, save money, keep me out of jail, right? Anchoring back on the core fundamental business value pillars, but giving them a little extra on if they bought this solution, what kind of value might they expect? And when we think of customer stories, who's come before those customers? And what was the value that they saw? So we're also building out a database that shows those additional storylines that if customer success needs to take that to the customer and say, we want to dive into this area. As an example, here's what we've seen with others. And use that as an exploratory tool for them to get a little bit deeper.
Yeah. Vikas, I want to emphasize again what didn't work because both you and I were involved in that. So not to rehash that, but I want to make sure this is really clear to everyone. And I think it's something that I found too, not just with what we did for you, but with others, in that you go into this thinking, hey, I'm going to prepare a business case, and that's my baseline. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to test against that post-deployment and go down to the level of detail that's in that business case and validate that, hey, the ROI promised is the ROI delivered. But I think what we both found, again, to reiterate this and clarify it a little bit, is that that was too detailed for customers. Like customers post-deployment didn't need that level of granularity, didn't need that detail. It's not like we still didn't want to prove that. Heck, we're proud of it and probably could prove the ROI, but the customers didn't want it. And that kind of led us to develop a simpler storytelling model as well, which was GROW, which is the goals. Make sure you're restating what the goals were and make sure that those are still the same. Reflect on the project and where you're at. So current state of adoption and all of the technical kind of details. And then the business value stuff. What are the outcomes along the lines of the simple kind of dialogue that you have? And then the other thing, and try to quantify that, but you don't have to quantify it down to the level of a ROI promised, ROI delivered. And then we also find that anecdotes are really important, and collecting some amazing customer quotes really help to put emotion behind some of those numbers. And that's the wins part of it. Just talk to that again, reiterate for the audience who may be considering this in customer success or value engineering or sales, kind of what we went through there and your kind of version of the storytelling that ultimately you'd like customer success to deliver in these quarterly value reviews.
Yeah, it's funny. When you talked about O is the one that I think hurts me the most. Because we built an incredible model, and you take any value consultant through it and they're going to do amazing things. But the reality was what we built pre-implementation, pre-sale, the customer needed as a financial justification to get budget approved.
Mm-hmm.
What they needed post-sale, vastly different.
Mm-hmm.
They want to show what they are doing is making a material impact to the organization.
Yeah.
So the two happen to be grossly different. And I'll tell you, until we went through that exercise and until we tested it with more customers than I'd like to admit, I think it took that realization to say, while they're similar, they're largely different.
Mm-hmm.
And while we could take what we did pre-sale and dust it off, clean it up, and use that as, we thought we were going to get this, and here's what you need, isn't where their heads were at anymore. They'd already moved on.
Mm-hmm.
And so now it's, how do I keep this sold internally? How do I keep my team doing all the good things so that they're getting the recognition across the organization? So it did take a few bumps and bruises to get there, but I think we got there rather quickly. The move forward was, how do we pivot?
Yeah, thank you, Vikas. So love the growth mindset that you're trying to instill on everyone and overcoming that sunk cost bias that we sometimes have with some of the projects that we've implemented and love dearly and spent dearly on. So thank you. Please, if you haven't done so yet, sign up for the Enterprise Value Collective on LinkedIn or on geniusdrive.com website to stay in touch on the latest events, tools, insights. If you liked what you heard here, hit the like button, subscribe so you stay up to date on the latest episodes. And until next time, our Enterprise Value Collective, keep sharing and growing together.